In this video, I'm going to look at some particle effects and do something with that. So what are particle effects? Well, the best thing to do is to show you. So I'm going to create a new composition and the usual 1280, 720. And then I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to create a solid, because a lot of the sort of generative effects, as in they sort of create graphics from the effect, sometimes require a kind of layer to act on. So I'm just going to create this solid, and I'm going to call it party, and click on OK. And I'm going to go to effect, simulation, and select particle playground. Now as I start moving the play bar along, you can see it's producing these red dots like a kind of fountain. And the particle playground, or any sort of particle effect, normally has sort of two parts. If we go to the parameters here, you can see it's got like canon, and that's the first parameter. So the canon is the emitter. So that's where, if I'm moving the position of the canon around now, that's where the particles are going to be ejected from. And then you can alter the particles. So you can change, if you go up here, you can change the direction of them. So let's move them around. And there you go. So generally, particle effects are used for things that are quite complex and organic, sort of fire, water, smoke, fireworks, kind of things like that. So what I'm going to do, I've got this image. Let's just import file of a kind of a kettle. Let's just stick that in there. So with this particle playground effect, the solid part has become transparent. It's becoming like an alpha channel in the background. And what I want to do is I'm going to create, if you zoom out a bit, like a kind of genie coming out of a lamp type effect from this metal kettle. Now at the moment we've just got these red dots, but what you can do is, if I go to the effects controls and select the particle layer, it's got a layer map function, which is this one down here. So what we can do is exchange those dots for another layer within the composition. So what it does, it kind of samples that and reproduces it at every single little dot. Now this kind of effect is really going to make your computer chug. Obviously the more particles it has, the more calculations it's going to have to do. So it's going to be quite intensive on the CPU. So what are we going to exchange those dots for? Well, what I'm going to do is create like a very organic, smoky, moving texture in another composition, render that out, and then put that in this composition and set the layer map to that layer. So a new composition, we're going to call this chaos, and click on OK. And I'm just going to rename this layer. Just right click on it and go to composition settings and call it kettle, just so I know what I'm working on. So let's go into the chaos. And what I'm going to do is create three layers for this. So I'm going to create a solid layer. I'm going to set this one to be blue. Okay, it's a blue solid. And then I'm going to use an effect called, where's it gone? Noise and grain and fractal noise. And what this does is it uses like algorithms to produce a chaotic, organic looking texture. So I'm just going to play around with this a bit. Turbulent, smooth, smeary. Oh yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Spline, yeah, that's looking nice and sort of smoky. Let's just, I want more black in it, so I'm going to increase the brightness and take up the contrast. Keep going, keep going. A bit more. I don't know, a bit further down. Yeah. And you can change the complexity of it. Obviously, the more complex, the more the computer's gonna work to do it. I'm gonna set it around about there. And what I want to do is to make this texture move. So there's this setting here called evolution. If you rotate that, you can see it kind of moves around. It's rather nice. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put a bit of scripting in that. So I'm going to hold down Alt and click on the stopwatch. And then it brings up the scripting box here, and I'm going to type in time multiplied by 30. So as the frames progress, it's going to rotate that evolution automatically for me. So let's see what that's like. It's going to take a while to render. So what I might do, I'm going to step down the resolution so that it's a bit more manageable. So I'm going to step it down to half. So that's just this little box here. The less resolution, the easier the time the computer has with it. Let's just see that in real time. So that green bit's rendered now. So I should be able to just preview a bit of that. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is then go to an effect, and I want to turn this into just blue. So I'm going to go to color correction and tritone. Oh no, I'm not going to use tritone. Ignore that. I'm going to use tint instead. Color correction and tint. And I'm going to map all the white values to blue. So there. Click on OK. There's a reason for this, but it'll make sense later on. I'm going to duplicate this layer. Where's it gone? Duplicate, Control D. Okay, so and then I'm going to change the solid to red. So I'm going to go to solid settings. I'm going to change it from the color pickers at the bottom of the screen. Change it to red and click on OK. Let's move that up there so you can see it. And that's good. I'm gonna, hang on. Let's do that again. Solid settings, color, red. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So I've got a blue layer, and next I'm going to have a red layer. So I'm going to move up to the top. And to make it different from the other layer, I'm going to go to the evolution options, which are over here. Click on that, and I'm going to change the random seed. So this will alter the pattern. So let's put it on 50, for instance. It doesn't really matter what you put on. So now I've got two different patterns, although you can't see that yet. And I'm going to change the tint from blue to red. And I'm going to change the way the two layers interact. So at the moment, the blend mode, which is this column here, is set to normal. I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to select a difference. So you'll be able to see both of them in like a kind of overlay. Yeah. It's looking very psychedelic. And then I'm going to duplicate it again. Control D. Oh no, I'm controlling it. I've duplicated the effect. I wanted to duplicate the layer. Composition, duplicate. There you go. And then solid settings. And change it to green. Lime green. Well, I just want green, plain green, please. Yeah, green solid. There we go. Change the tint on that to green. So I should have, I need to change the blend mode on that to, what have we done here? So we got red, We got green. Oh, I haven't changed the evolution options, so I need to change that to something else. 460. Add where's it gone again? Difference. So I can see all these different colors now, sort of blending in between each other. So that's my texture that I'm going to use. Now I could pre-compose this and put this composition into the kettle composition, but for the computer to do less work, what I'm going to do is actually render this out. So I'm going to go to composition, add to render queue, and I'm just going to render it out. That's Chaos AVI, click on save and render it. So that's rendered. I'm going to go into Kettle. I'm going to import file, import Chaos AVI, stick that in there. So now I've got all these layers. And what I want to do is I'm going to, let's just put it on this one for now. So I've used the eye icon to hide those other layers. And what I'm going to do is create a mask, because what I want to do when I use the particle effect, I need to mask an area of this off that I want to replace the particle that's in the effect. If that makes any sense. You'll see what happens when I do it. So I'm just going to use the pen tool, and I'm just going to make a kind of roughly circular shape like so, and then I'm going to put my layers back on. Actually, I'm going to move that up so you can see what's actually happening. And I'm going to go to the particle effect, and let's go to the effects controls. So what I'm looking for here is the layer map, which is this bit here. And use layer Chaos AVI, and I want to use the mask that I've created, and you can see what effect that's had. So it's basically the little bit that I've taken from there, it's mapped that to all those little dots. If I take that off and take that back to none, you can see it's the red dots, and then Chaos AVI. And so that I mean, basically it's reproducing every single, the whole entire image there. So we just want the mask. Now this is where it'll start to slow down considerably. So I'm just going to shorten the work area. So that's with it kind of just rendered. It looks glorious. So now we just have to play around with that and sort of like manipulate it into shape. So let's start by moving the producer, the Canon. Have I got the right layer here? Hopefully I have. Yeah, there we go. So I've got the right part of it. I'm going to make it a bit smaller. So I'm going to go into the Chaos AVI and select the mask. Let's just get, hang on. All right, so I'm going to click on, I just got to make sure I'm on the right layer. There you go. And then I should be able to shrink that down. Like so. Just want it to be a bit smaller. And then I'm going to mask feather, which is this parameter here, to make the edges soft. Let's take it in a bit. Oh, a bit too much. Yeah, that looks better. Next, I'm going to alter the time offset. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to the layer map and I'm going to offset it by 0.01. Ooh. So every time a frame gets produced, it's sampling a different frame from the Chaos AVI layer. So it's just adding more variation to it. Let's just, I might increase that a little bit more. Let's do 0.03. And you should see it like change color more dramatically. There you go. So now it's getting these sort of different colored layers because it's sampling the layer at different points. Now that I've offset the time, let's just see that. You can see that it runs out. That's because of the time offset and the shortness of this clip. So what I'm going to do is extend this clip by using a loop. So I'm going to right click on the KSAV layer. I'm going to go to time, enable time remapping. So now I've got these 2 points, and then I'm going to extend, because now I can because I've got time remapping on, the whole clip like so. Normally it would get to this point and it would freeze, so if I move it along you should see it'll just remain, it won't sort of change, the colours won't change. So what I need to do is put in a bit of script on that. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, click on the stopwatch, I'm going to type in loop out like so, and then in the brackets I'm going to write speech marks ping pong. So what it's going to do now, when it reaches that end point there, it's going to start playing it backwards to this point and then forwards, backwards and forwards, and extending it in a loop. So if we play it back now, it doesn't run out, it keeps going. Okay, so then what we need to do next is kind of shape this up a bit more. I'm going to start by getting the image right first. I'm just going to take that off so I don't have to look at it, and stop it and go to the teapot. Oh, it's not straight. So let's just go into transform commands at the bottom here, rotation minus 0.01. Yeah, that's straightened up a bit more. About there. I'm going to lock that layer so that it doesn't get in the way. I'm going to hide the Chaos AV layer. I'm going to put this one on. Let's zoom in on that. Just double click on it, and then put the position. Let's see if we can get it to come out the top of. Oh, I'm on full resolution. Let's take it down to half. Make things a bit easier, hopefully. Then I'm going to change the direction of the emitter. And then I'm going to look at the gravity, the effect of gravity. So I'm going to turn it off for now. So this gravity here, because that's what's pulling it down. So let's take that to 0. Now you can see it's going straight up. Let's move the emitter a little bit. I'm going to tweak this a bit later on with something else. Okay. So now I've got it going sort of straight up. And I'm going to use the gravity to kind of make it drift across to act like the wind. But first of all, I'm going to reduce the amount of particles per second, because currently there's 60. I'm just going to take that down to half that, about 30 or so. Yeah. And then I'm going to increase the force, but this time I'm going to change the force direction to 90 degrees. Yeah, so it starts blowing it that way across. Let's take it across a bit more. I want to add a bit more variation into it as well, so I'm going to put a bit of scripting on the direction of the gravity. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I'm going to type in wiggle. So this is going to add a bit of randomness to it. I'm going to do it 0.5 of a second, so, and increase by 100%, sorry, not 100%, 100 degrees. Let's have a look at that. I'm going to do the same to the velocity. So this value here, Alt, wiggle. I'm going to do this 2 times a second, and let's try 60, see what that does. And the problem playing around with like chaotic stuff is that you have to spend a lot of time tweaking it to get it just right. So I'm just going to play around with this for a bit. Okay, I've got it tweaked. Pretty much fairly happy with that. So what I've done is just manipulate the parameters a bit more. I've increased the particles to 70 per second. And I've used this persistent property mapper. So I've mapped the layer, which is the layer chaos layer, which I'm using, the source, and then I've mapped the red in that to opacity, the green in that to static friction. I haven't done anything with the blue, but that's looking a lot more interesting. Yeah. So I'm just going to work on sort of drawing it back into the kettle using the mesh warp tool. So I'm going to distort, mesh warp, so that places a mesh over this layer. I'm going to go to distortion, and I'm going to click on this. I'm going to drag it into here. I'm going to pinch this area like so, like that. And drag it out a bit here, make it a bit more warped. Let's just move that across a bit, see what effect that has. And drag that down here, move that there, a bit like that. So I'm just going to mask off this bit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate, all the layers are getting complicated. I'm going to duplicate the JPEG, Control D, make sure I've got it selected. Oh, I've got it locked, that's why. Control D, I'm going to put one on top. And then I'm just going to create a tiny mask around here. Let's just zoom in so I can see what I'm doing a bit better. Just so it looks like it's coming out of the kettle a bit better. I'll adjust that slightly. There you go. Might just move the producer or the mesh. Let's move the position. Oh, not too much. Back a bit. Perfect. So that's what it's coming out like now. For the final kind of pizzazz, I'm going to add a glow effect to that. So stylize and glow. Let's just tweak that a bit. Glow radius. Let's alter the opacity, make it a bit more see-through. There's a transform command, opacity, something like that. A bit less. And then for the final effect, I'm just going to put a motion blur on it. There's more you could do to this. I might add a bit more texture using a bit of add a bit of noise to this. Might also want to do some kind of shadow by duplicating, like rendering this out and then duplicating that layer with a low opacity, and then using the scale command to sort of shrink it down, so you're just getting this sort of black shadow from that. But all that remains is to render this out. So that's it rendered. Let's take it back. Yeah, so that's what you can do with particle effects.